Welcome to the Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast.
Hello and welcome to this week's podcast. I'm Hannah Quinn Mulligan. Coming up on the show this week, a big day for farmers as EU budget day arrives and a 5% cut for the Common Agricultural Policy post-2020 is announced.
If you haven't the money, like 12 billion less in the EU budget, there was going to be a difficult task to be able to hold the present level of expenditure in the CAP. But we have mitigated the worst effects of it, in my view, by ensuring that the maximum reduction in the direct payments post-2020 in this proposal would be 3.9%.
And landowners in Tipperary prepare to fight the pipe as Irish Water looks set to issue compulsory purchase orders on their land.
They're taking a 50-metre strip. The pipe is 2.2 metres. Right? The hole that's going to have to be dug is probably going to have to be 4 or 5 metres in order to get it down.
So we're looking at the field here in front of us. So how wide is that field when we talk about 50 metres wide?
A Conan Street in Dublin. It will be a compulsory purchase order and it will be contested the whole way.
But first, as mentioned in the intro, EU Budget Day has arrived. Our correspondent Phelim O'Neill is in Brussels and spoke with Agricultural Commissioner Phil Hogan about the changes to the budget and the implications for farmers.
Commissioner Hogan, you spent the last half hour or so explaining how the budget has been arrived at in relation to agriculture. The reality is that it is a hit, no matter what way we present it. It is a hit that you sought to manage as best you can.
Well, inevitably there was going to be a reduction in expenditure, and I said that for the last number of weeks for anybody who wished to listen, that if you haven't the money, like 12 billion less in the EU budget, there was going to be a difficult task to be able to hold the present level of expenditure in the CAP. But we have mitigated the worst effects of it, in my view, by ensuring that the maximum reduction in the direct payments post-2020 in this proposal would be 3.9%. But of course, if there is more money coming into the pot from member states during the course of this year to make up the difference in the budget that we've lost due to the UK exit, well then of course this can be looked at again. We've also modified the Rural Development Programme to allow member states to pay more into the fund. I expect that this will happen in the case of Ireland, and where farmers, the small and medium-sized farmers, should not see any reduction in their income, and also the people that are farming in areas of natural constraint should not see any reduction in their income. I think that's a fair achievement when you have a lot less money.
How will that work? How do you think small and medium Irish farmers will get away without taking a cut?
Well, if we use the capping system of €60,000 and use the proceeds of that for small and medium-sized farmers in terms of the direct payments, this is the logical outcome of it. 40 hectares is the average farm size in Ireland, and I think those farmers certainly should see no cut or very little cut. And in addition to that, when the government decides to put €47 million a year, which is not a lot of money, into Pillar 2, they will be able to ensure that there's no cut in those farm incomes in the areas of natural constraint.
I suppose coming back to the core issue at question here, this is the start of the discussion today. What's really needed here is member states to look and recalibrate, if you like, the contributions that they're making to Europe. The Budget Commissioner explained how it was 1.1 something percent that you're talking about. The reality is in the past that figure was as high as 1.3%. If member states are truly committed to the European Union and the programmes that have served it so well, they need to be investing more.
Well, look, the good news is that 22 out of 27 member states have no difficulty in putting additional contributions into the EU budget, but it has to be agreed by unanimity. And there are 5 member states who are very strongly opposed at the moment. But of course, as discussions go on during the course of this year and into early next year, things can change, and therefore they may be prepared to change their minds on this particular issue, especially if they see more money for security and protection of the citizen and border protection. All of these are important issues for the 5 countries that I mentioned.
If we look at the best case scenario and we can bring them on board, then can you be confident that you will get the issue reopened in terms of the cap budget, that you actually could, if everything went well and you got a fair wind, that you could actually get those cuts reversed?
I believe that if there is more money going into the budget, that I will get a proportional amount of additional allocation. But of course, that's a matter for member states to decide, and it has to be, as I said, by a unanimous decision.
And of course, the final point, the whole UK situation is incredibly fluid, and there's absolutely no guarantee yet that they will walk away when all comes to the end of the day. That, of course, would be the dream solution if we had them back on board, where they were a significant contributor in whatever type of arrangement it might be. It would still be more money.
It's worth remembering that the European Union did not advocate that the UK should leave the European Union. It was the UK people that decided that themselves in a referendum. And of course, we would welcome them back but there's no sign of that particular change of heart politically at the moment. We are operating on the basis that there will be a Brexit, that there will be 12 billion less for the EU budget, and we have to budget accordingly, because the EU budget cannot run a deficit like a member state budget.
Commissioner Hogan, thank you very much.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast.
Irish Water has announced a €1.3 billion plan to construct a pipeline from the Partine Basin to Dublin and the surrounding area. But a number of farmers in Tipperary are not best pleased by the prospect of being issued with compulsory purchase orders for their farmland. I travelled to the county and spoke to Liam Minahan, dairy farmer and organiser of Fight the Pipe.
Ridiculous to think about. When you see 50% of London's water comes from ground wells and they have not sunk one bore. That's crazy.
You've got your cows out anyway.
They're ones that are not due to cave, yeah, they're all out. I'm Liam Minahan. We're in the centre of the universe, and this is the townland of Nye, right? And this is where I'm farming. I was gifted when I inherited the farm here. And it's good, free draining soil, fertile, ideal for milking cows.
And that's what you're doing here, obviously. We've seen your lovely Austrian Fleckwick cows that you've brought over, and they're out grazing at the minute. So we're looking out in your field, so point out to me where this pipe that Irish Water want to plant in the ground is going.
There the Arra Mountains up there, right? It's leaving the Shannon at the far side of those mountains. They're coming around those mountains on the south side, right? They'll be crossing the Nina River there just at the far side of that van. When it crosses the Nina River, it'll have travelled 30 kilometres. It'll still be only 4 kilometres from the lake. When this was first muted back 22 years ago, there was some semblance of logic in that Dublin had a huge issue back 22 years ago, in that it had a water treatment and a water distribution problem. They have solved the treatment problem with the upgrading of the treatment plants in Dublin, but they have completely ignored the distribution problem. And the reason they have ignored the distribution problem is because there is so much water in Dublin and Ireland, it was easier to waste more water than it was to fix the leaks. In other words, Dublin is leaking, is it something like 12,000 milk lorries of water a day. We're changing the name of the organisation from Fight the Pipe to Fight the Pipe, Fix the Leaks. Right? We could change it again next week, but it's just hard to get your head around what the thinking is here.
So it's 170 kilometres long and it's 2.2 metres wide.
No. They're taking a 50-metre strip. The pipe is 2.2 metres. Right? The hole that's going to have to be dug is probably going to have to be 4 or 5 metres in order to get it down.
So we're looking at the field here in front of us. So how wide is that field when we talk about 50 metres
like
wide?
O'Connell Street in Dublin.
Okay.
Right? When I let my cows out in the morning, right, it's going to be crossing up there the far side of those trees. I let my cows out, they'll have to wait there. When I'm finished milking, I'll have to cross the pipe. Then I'm going to have to cross the road I always cropped, and then to get half of what's at the other side of the road, I'm going to have to cross the pipe again. That means when I'm finished after getting the cows back to the field, it'll be time to bring them back.
And how long is the construction meant to take?
Up to 3 years. They're going to be taking possession of the land for up to 3 years. Let me finish milking. Right? This is devastating. So it is. Right? Lads don't realise it. And what's it for? Taking water to a city that doesn't need it? Like, this is just digging for the sake of digging. What I'd like to do is say that there is so many other alternatives. 1, the desalination plant. 2, groundwater. Like, these were not considered. And the reason that they got away with not considering them was by saying we need 330 million litres a day. They needed a huge, big, grandiose project. Emmett Kennedy has categorically proven that they don't need a big, grandiose project, but they're still going to go ahead with it. Right? It's proven that if they fix the leaks, they don't need to do this big, grandiose problem. Then, if they have a crisis situation, either turn on a desalination plant or take it from groundwater. At the moment, we're just moving from one river to another. Illogical.
And
right?
the compensation wouldn't cover that, because obviously people are saying, why are farmers complaining when, compensation is being offered?
Well, compensation is something that is very temporary. This pipe is permanent. If I get money for this pipe, in 20 years' time when I move on, one son will probably get the farm, the rest of them will be looking for a share of the compensation, whatever it is, or if there's any of it left. So the poor devil that gets the farm is going to be looking at a yellow line across the middle of this farm and saying, look at where that Egypt let him take the pipe. And that'll be my legacy, because the money will be gone and the damage will still be there. So, it's short-term gain for long-term punishment. And, anyone who tells me that they can come in here, if they come in here during wet weather, if they come in here with a bad digger driver, if they come in here under a time deadline, the contractor, I'm Benjax, I'm going to get a mess of a job. And Irish Water can promise me the sun, moon and stars, but they can't guarantee me good quality. Right? And they'll be compensating me afterwards. Once they get permission to go, they're gone. and it'll be to hell with Lee Minahan and deal with him afterwards.
I mean, and what was the consultation process? Did you get a letter through the door? Did you have any right in it? Is it going to be a compulsory purchase order? What's going to happen?
It will be a compulsory purchase order, and it will be contested the whole way, right? If you actually look at this, considering that, number one, we're contesting the fact that it's not necessary infrastructure, because a compulsory purchase order is for necessary infrastructure. This is not necessary infrastructure. This is a consultant-led land grab, and it's hard to know what the motivation is.
We hope that you're enjoying this Irish Farmers Journal podcast. Find out more at farmersjournal.ie.
Castle Blaney Mart in County Monaghan went into liquidation recently, leaving a number of farmers and creditors unpaid. Our correspondent Thomas Hubert spoke with Monaghan IFA chair Frank Brady at a meeting which was attended by over 100 farmers who wanted to find out what the next step would be.
Farmers wanted to know where they stood, which is not in a very good place, unfortunately. They wanted to know the level of debtness that the company had. There was 160,000 owed to farmers. There's more owed to people that put deposits on the auctioneering firm, and then there's money owed that he put in himself. There's preferential people that owed money beforehand that will have to be dealt with before the farmers, and there's not much money to come in other than what farmers or cattle dealers or whoever owes, and basically it doesn't look very bright at the minute.
One aspect that was raised this evening is that the Mart lost its licence to operate as an auctioneer a long time ago, and we only are finding it now. What does that mean for the regulation, really, of this kind of activity?
Yes, we don't know yet. It's 14 months since he lost his licence, so you'd imagine that something should have been done to inform the farmers. Now, they will claim it's up on a website, on which ever looks at websites like that, and then you have to go in and you have to go looking through a long list of marts and auctioneers in the country. These crowd were coming in to protect the farmers and the customers, and they haven't done that. They haven't done what they were supposed to do. They haven't said this. They didn't notify people to say that it's no longer safe to deal with this firm, and if you dealt with this firm and money is lost, it's your own tough baby. Everybody was under the assumption that it was still insured. So they have a question to answer there, and how they answer it's up to them.
Where do we go now? There was a committee of farmers who are owed money that was formed tonight. What can they do? What have they decided to do with you?
Well, we've decided we're going to set up and meet, and we'll see where that takes us. And within myself and Kevin, and we'll liaise with these and the liquidator. So that's what we're going to do, and we'll just take it step by step.
You've met the liquidator, so there is a relationship there.
Well, there's a relationship at the minute. I think when I ring him in the morning and inform him that there's another 80 or 90 farmers to come in as well, he might be surprised.
Okay, Frank, good luck with all the work.
Thank you, Thomas.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast.
AgriChem Way, Way spelt W-H-E-Y, is a new 22 million project being taken on by Glanbia in their bioeconomy campus in Tipperary. Our editor, Amy Ford, spoke to Glanbia CEO Jim Bergen about the project.
Yeah, so by way of background here, we process over 1 billion litres of whey every year. And from the manufacture of whey proteins, we have a side stream, which is actually the sugar from the whey process. And we convert that into lactose, but we also have a surplus of that product, and we have been looking for to bring that to value, I suppose, over the last number of years. So we have developed a process that will convert this waste stream effectively into bio-based products. So the first type of product could be lactic acid, for example. But further on from that, we could produce products that could be used in the biodegradable plastic industry. So really what we're doing here is we're bringing a low-value byproduct and converting it into a higher value finished product, if you like, or indeed ingredient. It's a big step out for us. It's the first time in the world that this process has been developed to convert a dairy waste stream into lactic acid. It's a great credit to some of the technologists within Glanbia, Dr. Bill Morrissey in particular. And it's beneficial because we can create more value out of the litre of milk.
Perfect. And I suppose going forward then, this has been looked at possibly to be a model or a project for around the world in other countries possibly. Sure, yeah.
So today the processing of whey permeate is a challenge. in whey processing overall. So there are banks of whey permeate that are not brought to value. But we're very focused on our own element of this first. So we have to prove that this process works at commercial level. That's what this grant is about and what the project will be about for the next number of months. And should we be successful, then we will build a biorefinery and develop the finished products. But it is a process that would be welcomed by many if they had it around the world.
And local employment-wise in Lachine, is there many going to be employed?
Yeah, it's hard to put a number on that. We have a number of technologist people in quite specialised roles today and project managers, and we have been recruiting. We have some people who have joined us recently on the project. It will be a pilot project for this year, so not huge numbers, but there are a number of R&D people. And then I suppose if it moved on from there to the refinery, well then there would be construction roles around Lachine and around Tipperary, Kilkenny. And beyond that, then it would be a very automated process, but there would be a number of specialist roles and high quality roles within the refinery itself.
Stay tuned, because still to come we have an update on property prices and getting jiggy at Gigginstown, Michael O'Leary's annual sale.
Don't miss this week's bumper issue of the Irish Farmers Journal with 13 pages of shows coverage, which includes your essential shows calendar for 2018, 10 pages of property and land sales, 7 pages of farm infrastructure, and 14 pages of farming on the Wild Atlantic Way. And in news, here's Paul Mooney.
Minister makes shock announcement, compulsory EID tagging for all sheep, and cap budget cut 5%. Commissioner Hogan writes exclusively explaining why.
Inside this week's Irish Farmers Journal, on sale today.
In the John B. Keane play, The Field, the Bull McCabe famously referred to a field as a child he nursed, nourished and tended to its every need. "My only want is that green grass, that lovely green grass," he said. Well, a love for land is deep-rooted in the Irish psyche, and Thomas Hubert spoke to our property expert Anthony Jordan on current land sales.
Yeah, look, it's as we know, it's been a very, very challenging spring in terms of the weather, and that has very directly affected the land market in Ireland. What we're seeing across the country is a lot of land being held that would have maybe gone to auction maybe in 2017 or 16 when there was better springs. Those properties would have been offered to auction. What we tend to see is around the first week of March, last week of February, when there's grass growth, more and more farms come to the market. What we've seen this year is actually farms being held off for quite some time, simply because people want to wait until the farms look desirable. What we're expecting to see in the next month is an influx of larger properties coming to the market that should be on the market already. So in that sense, everything's been pushed out by at least a month in the land in the property industry in Ireland.
The months everywhere, whether you're looking at grass growth or land changing hands, the same kind of 1 month delay we've had everywhere.
Absolutely, and it's causing a lot of frustration around farmers who would have been interested in buying land before, like dairy farmers, are now more concerned about where to source fodder, getting their cattle out and getting their affairs in order at home rather than buying land. So that's also pushed the land market out quite considerably this year.
Have there been many sales, I suppose, even between those that did go onto the market? How has that gone? The few numbers that you've seen.
There has been sales, and it's actually really just depends on geography. Some sales, as I just said, dairy farmers aren't interested in buying, and other farmers, actually, that goes across all sectors, aren't interested in buying. In some places then, like Tipperary, I was talking to a very prominent auctioneer down there, and they believe that sales haven't been affected at all. Now, there has been sales nationwide, that must be said, just not as many as possibly would be in other years. But in some counties where dairy is prominent and competition is still very, very strong, there would have been sales, and would be quite strong and considerable sales at that. So what we will see in the next month is a real influx of larger properties coming to the market, and we should see the land market kick off in earnest.
Prices for those that did go ahead, that's a smaller sample, how are they looking this year?
Seems very strong. Dairy seems to have continued in the same vein as it has in the previous 18 months. Beef prices haven't seemed all that strong, but they are competing. To be honest, in terms of the general trends, they've remained relatively the same. What we see in the southeast is some extremely strong sales, and the likes of North Wexford, Carlow direction, we've seen some really, really good tillage farmers and good dry stock farmers really competing for land. In fact, there was a sale last week where there was 11 separate bidders, and none was dairy farmers. All were dry stock and tillage, and all were competing heavily. So it really depends on, I suppose, it really depends on how much financial muscle the farmer has. I don't know where the tillage farmers and beef farmers are getting the financial muscle from, but they are competing. In the likes of Tipperary, we're seeing some very, very strong sales as well, and that's continued since September last year, which was a very kind of the start of a real significant surge of sales in that county. So we are seeing good sales. We'll be expecting to see a very strong summer in land sales.
Is it the same on the leasing side? How is that going?
Yeah, so leasing has continued in the same vein as it had last year as well. The scarcity of product is definitely there. There's not much lease land coming up or coming up in the market. We are seeing stronger prices than last year. Last year's average was €196 an acre. I would be expecting to see if when we review those figures that they will be up slightly, or I would expect them to be up. Farmers seem to be renewing the same leases again. If they're going for 11-month con acre, farmers are happy to pay the same price as they did the year before, simply because they know that it isn't that readily available. Also, a very interesting fact that we've seen is that one particular auctioneer in Cork, Eamon O'Brien, has quoted that he has seen a lot of farmers who have been really fed up this spring, who have actually put their land up for lease. And he's also seen a kind of a large influx of acreage coming to the market for autumn that farmers just want to lease out, simply because they're finding it they're going very tough, especially with the challenging spring has brought that, I suppose, problem to a head. So leasing is, I suppose, to sum it up, it's more of the same, and it will continue to be as long as the tax-free incomes are encouraging people to lease their land.
The long-term leasing credit, yeah, and I suppose from what you were saying, that €200 psychological barrier looking a bit weak this year will probably be crossed.
So 196 is the average, and everybody, I suppose, has the psychological thing about €200 an acre. I think that's even gone. I think people are more looking at the psychological benchmark now is almost €300 an acre, such as the demand since 2015, and that's something that I'm hearing more and more. I'm always careful to say €300 an acre because it might drive the market up, but unfortunately the more and more you see it, I suppose that the more and more it's happening. So yeah, I mean, it looks like it's going to go over €196 an acre this year.
Okay, that's where we are. Anthony, you have more details in this week's Irish Country Living. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Thomas.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie and on iTunes every Thursday.
And last, but certainly not least, Ryanair boss Michael O'Leary had his annual Pedigree Angus sale on his farm in Gigginstown in Westmeath. The sale day has turned into a regular family fun day, with face painting, a parade of his winning racehorses, burger vans and disco music. I headed to the sale to check out the bouncy castle and the bulls.
We can hear there's some party music in the background. It is the oddest sale I've ever been to so far anyway.
Put all the people into good humour, dancing humour.
Exactly, and the sunshine's come out as well.
We were here 2 years ago, actually, yeah, it was in 16, and we had a great day out. The sun was shining as well, so it's come out to see the horses and see all the cattle and animals.
It's great. Well, it's going to kick off soon, so we'll
fingers crossed.
Hopefully it'll
stay
be
away.
sunny for the rest of the day anyway.
And lucky for O'Leary.
Yes.
That's it, very lucky.
Yeah.
Lot number 2, 7, 13, 23 is a nice young bull as well at the moment.
And what do you think of the 4 or 5 stars, that they're all 4 or 5 stars? Does that matter?
Oh, it does. It does.
John Griffiths, and I come from Shropshire in the UK.
And what's brought you here today, besides it being a beautiful day and there's a bouncy castle I've seen?
Well, I came over to Punchestown to races, and I thought I'd come and bought myself an Irish Farmers Journal. The cattle aren't that big, are they, here? I was surprised. I thought they might have been a little bit bigger, because...
Would they be bigger in Shropshire?
I would have thought they probably would have been, yes.
Because he's put a lot of money into his breeding.
He's put a lot of money into it, yes.
Well, I can hear them starting up inside, so we'll head over. But
all right,
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mambo number 5. At 2 bid, 2,000 bid. Next, sir. At 2 bid, at 2,000 bid, at 2,000. At 2-1, 2-1 a bit, 2-1.
Paul Merton, Merton's Auctioneers.
And have you done some of the sales here before?
I've been doing the sales here for many years. I wouldn't like to say how long. A lot of people are saying they should get fed up looking at me and be better get away, but still at it anyway, you know.
So I think the top price for a bull was 3,500. Top price for a heifer. A couple of the heifers made 3,850.
Yeah.
I mean, how did that compare to other years now? Like you said, it's been a tough year for bulls, pedigree bulls this year.
Probably it wouldn't be as good as last year. Now I can't tell you the average. We're just after walking down off the rostrum, but the bulls wouldn't be our heifers. Well, the heifers probably, the maiden heifers would have been as good as last year, if not better. The bulls, no, they wouldn't be just quite as good as last year, but wouldn't have expected that they would be. You know.
I have a funny feeling you'll be back again next year anyway.
If we're here, please God.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you.
And that's it for this week. Thanks for listening. Be sure to pick up a paper to find out what the reduction in the CAP budget is going to mean to you. And remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat and Instagram. The sound engineer this week was Ferdia Mooney, and I'm Hannah Quinn Mulligan.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie and on iTunes every Thursday.